I'm James Evans, former state senator and former chair of the Utah Republican Party. We created a broad-based coalition. I have here with me Ms. Jeannette Williams from the NAACP, Ms. Nichole Mason from Utah Parents United, and Mr. Michael Clara, former Salt Lake City School Board member. Today we're presenting to you regarding an issue with respect to school boards, in particular individual members of local school boards and behaviors that we've observed, experienced that are outside the bounds of law and board policy. And we believe that there is a solution to fix this, and that's what we want to present to you today. It was from 2 years ago, actually, by Channel 2 News, and it was regarding the Salt Lake City School Board and the fact that they had to issue an apology for unethical behavior. What's particular about this that I want to draw your attention to is that at that time, the school board president resigned because she said of, quote, unethical things that was going on. And another school board member, Mr. Nichole, said that he filed 3 ethics complaints and nothing happened. Senate Bill 180 was passed in 2012 by Senator Bramble, and Senator Bramble has agreed to sponsor the legislation we're seeking to update this law. This bill created the Political Subdivisions Ethics Review Commission. The problem with the law as it currently is that it allows each political subdivision to create its own ethics review commission. These political subdivisions ethics review commissions are so conflicted that they're not able to police themselves. So we need to be able to change the law so that there is an opportunity when there is misbehavior, that there is an opportunity for citizens to file the complaint and it receives the appropriate hearing. We think this will also modify the behavior of many of these local school board members.
Jeannette Williams, president of the NAACP. The NAACP would like transparency on all school boards. School boards are expected to be as open as possible concerning board discussions and any discussions that will be made on behalf of the district. Their main concern should be student success. And when parents are seeing that school board members are not focusing on students, they're likely to feel untrusted of the district school board. And one of the objectives of the NAACP is to make sure that school boards are held accountable. The Salt Lake City School Board is dysfunctional and needs oversight. Board members are not allowing school officials to do their job and micromanages everything. It is more important to be the majority of the board to have friends in the cabinet, and they are using their friendships to file complaints to other cabinet members. There is a waste of taxpayers' money. They do not adhere to written board policies. They would rather make excuses rather than to reprimand their employees, especially when they are friends.
Hi, my name is Nichole Mason. I'm the president of Utah Parents United, and I thought the best way I could illustrate a need for oversight on school boards is by sharing a personal example that happened to me. So on July 13th, 2021, after all COVID protocols were ended, I attempted to attend a school board meeting at the Davis School District. So I walked up to the front doors, and the doors were locked. And it said you must present a photo ID to enter and ring a doorbell. So I was with a few other parents, and we were greeted by an armed police officer and allowed through one by one. Some individuals were asked to provide ID, and some weren't. So I then proceeded toward the main meeting room, where a board workshop meeting was in progress. I was denied entry into this board workshop meeting, and I was told it was because it was already in progress. Now, right away, a red flag was already up from being made to show ID to enter a public meeting, an open public meeting. But I was even more concerned when I was denied access to an ongoing meeting because it was already ongoing. And I don't recall anywhere in OPMA where it says you're not allowed to attend an open public meeting if it's already in session. So I was denied access to the workshop meeting, but I stayed until the regular board meeting. So when I entered that room of the regular board meeting, the chairs were all spaced uncomfortably apart. So again, this is after all COVID protocols had been ended. I verified that with other school board members on the Davis School Board. So I walked in and I scooted my chair next to my friend's chair, and other people did the same. The couple in front of me, a husband and wife, they scooted their chairs next to each other. Shortly thereafter, a school board member came in and said, "You need to move your chairs so that they're all 3 feet apart." And we said, "Well, why?" And he said, "Because that's the rules." And we said, "Well, how is that the rules? Like, where in OPMA does it say I have to sit 3 feet apart from the person next to me?" And we were told, "These are the rules. If you do not want to follow the rules, then the gentleman in the back of the room will escort you out." The gentleman in the back of the room that he pointed to happened to be an armed police officer. So under threat of being removed by an armed police officer for sitting too close to my neighbor, we moved our chairs back. But again, I knew something was wrong. That was not a board decision. It was verified that that was not a board decision. There was no COVID restrictions in place. So why was I made to sit 3 feet apart by my neighbor? Even the husband and wife sitting in front of me had to move their chairs 3 feet apart. The interesting thing is, and I took pictures of this, the district employees sitting against the left were not sitting 3 feet apart. 2 school board members sitting next to each other were not 3 feet apart. The presenters who came to the microphone were not 3 feet apart. So why was this arbitrary rule that I had to sit 3 feet apart from my neighbor? So, knowing that this was Utah and this was America, I went and I talked to the armed police officer. And I started asking him questions. And I said, "Why was I locked out of this meeting? Why was I refused access to the workshop meeting? Why was I told I couldn't sit within 3 feet of my neighbor?" And all he said was, "I don't know, I don't know, I don't know." And I said, "Well, I feel like this is a violation of OPMA. Like, this is violating my rights as an individual. And so what do you do when there's a violation of the individual rights?" And this is the part that my entire presentation rests on. I took notes because I knew something was wrong. His name was Officer Cooper with the Farmington Police Department. I time-stamped everything. I documented my questions. Officer Cooper said, "The code is vague, so they can do whatever they want." I said, "Well, what recourse do I have?" And he said, "The only recourse you have is to file a complaint with the civil court." So resting on the idea that the code is vague and that school board members can do whatever they want, some individuals are weaponizing police or other instruments to execute their personal agendas. And that's where, as a constituent, I'm coming to say that the Constitution is meant to protect the people against abuses of power by the government. And in this instance, because the code is vague, there's a loophole or something that allows certain individuals to execute their personal agenda. And so that's why we're asking for an ethics review committee, is so that there's a system of checks and balances. Nowhere is there a check on school boards. And in the absence, there are individuals who are abusing that power.
Mike Brown. I am the father of 5 boys in the Davis School District. And as Nichole mentioned, I was at that same meeting where we were, threatened essentially beforehand. While we were moving our chairs together, a board member came up and said, "Folks, you're gonna have to move the chairs 3 feet apart." And I simply asked why, and he said, "Well, if you're in our room, you have to follow our rules." And I, just said, "Well, is this your room?" I thought it was a public meeting, public place. And he threatened me personally and said, "Mr. Brown, if you're gonna act that way, I'm gonna throw you out." And so here I am with, other parents and being threatened by this board member. I had already signed up to speak public comment. And so when it was my turn to get up there, I simply, just to let the viewers who were watching on YouTube know what had happened, I said, "Just so you know, us parents were threatened for sitting together." And immediately the chair, the board president, said, "Mr. Brown, you can't bring that up. If you bring that up, I'm going to get you thrown out." And so I was threatened twice. And, I simply finished my comment, sat down, and then I left the meeting early. Well, it was a week later that I get a knock on the door early morning, woke up my family, and whom I greeted by the Davis County School District Security officer and 2 police officers standing at my door, and he gave me a trespass notice. And There was nothing listed on the notice as to what I had done. There was no recourse. It cited this vague law, but there was no recourse, no due process whatsoever. And so here I am being treated as a criminal, and I assume because I questioned, the chairs, but like I said, it was never put forward what I had done. After repeated attempts and after more than a year, legal fees and stress and heartache on me and my family, because I was simply going to a school board to speak up for my kids, the trespass notice was only lifted because the new superintendent felt he could honor that for me. No reason given, exactly why. Like I said, no due process. So one other thing I should mention is through a Freedom of Information Act request, I got some emails between these board members and what was said. And specifically, I was individually pointed out where he said, I don't want Mr. Brown having any opportunities to attend any of his children's functions for the period of his trespass. What did I do? I was never told. Thank goodness I got this FOIA request before they put the crackdown on future FOIA requests, where now they charge an exorbitant amount of money. But I myself was individually targeted for speaking at school board meetings and trying to stand up for my kids. This vague law needs to go away. It is being abused. Individuals on school boards, and Davis District is just one of many in this state, all up and down the Wasatch Front. Individuals are using this as a weapon. If they don't agree with somebody, if they don't like their free speech, then they're going to silence them and threaten them with trespass. And that's what's happened to me, and it's been a nightmare the last year and a half, simply because of this abuse of power. Like Nichole said, are we not in America? Why is free speech being weaponized? It's got to stop. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lisa Davis. I am a mother and resident of Iron County. First, thank you for this opportunity and giving your attention to this very important topic. In 2018, a local school board member found it necessary to resign from the Iron County School Board. Utah state statute is very clear with regard to replacing a board member. Applications for replacement must be solicited 2 weeks before public interviews are held. Evidence shows that statute was not followed. Additionally, and again, according to statute, the interview process must take place within a public meeting. This did not happen, as board minutes demonstrate. It seems violations were made to guarantee a hand-picked appointment. If it wasn't corruption, it clearly reveals ignorance with regard to state statute and the need for accountability of checks and balances. Which is worse? The mentioned appointed member is now our school board president, who has been involved in several controversial decisions that impact our children. The ramifications of illegal appointments is far-reaching and can be devastating and impossible to correct. Thank you.
My name is Andrea Nelson. I'm a resident of Iron County. My name is Andrea Schertz Nelson. My father was the founding dean of the College of Education at SUU, now then SUSC. I have taught in Iron County. I have taught in Houston, Texas. As an example of some of the abuse that Lisa talked about, in 2019, student leaders, middle school and high school, were hosted by the school board at a luncheon that was followed by a presentation on CRT. The specifics of that presentation, organized by the board president and superintendent, had been unannounced to students, parents, and other board members. CRT was presented to student leaders without parental knowledge in a one-sided view of a topic that's highly complex and controversial. It's by sad experience that we have learned that the adage that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Thank you.
I have some others that I've emailed to you. There's a statement from a parent in Alpine who showed that he was retaliated against without any due process and without a board vote. And there's a statement from a parent in Weber who talks about what he experienced. So my intent was really to show that it was across districts and that it wasn't an isolated incident. But because of this vague code, and remember that those are Officer Cooper's words, not mine. But because he could say that the code is vague, so school board members can do whatever they want and that there's no recourse, that's why we're coming and saying, okay, help us out here. We need a system of checks and balances to protect us as the people.